Welcome everyone, good morning, evening and afternoon. Today we have Sideways Sunday. That's right, we are next to each other, watching something on TV together. What we are watching for today is a few changes happening in the beta of Dragonflight related to the balance tuning, but before that, there are a few interesting things worth talking about and worth going over. Starting with something that all of you plebs not in the beta can now test together with everyone else, which are the changes happening in the beta, like the balance tuning I just mentioned, is also going to be available on the PTR. What does this mean exactly? This means that the version that exists in the beta of Dragonflight and the version that exists in the PTR are going to be the same when it comes to the state of the classes and the state of the specs. So no, you won't get the new continent in the PTR, you won't get the new systems in the PTR and whatnot. What you will get, however, is the exact same version of a class and the exact same version of a spec in the PTR as well. So as for example, as when we will go over the balance tuning that is happening, you will be able to test that as well now, even if you don't have the beta, just by going inside the PTR, which is available to everyone. So that is our first good thing. The second thing worth going over is, let's just say, the slight extra details that Blizzard gave us related to the creation catalyst. So yesterday, I believe it was, or a couple of days ago, I am losing track of time, it was the announcement of Blizzard about the new ways to acquire charges from the catalyst. The new ways included no longer being free, no longer you being given charges every week or a couple of times every week, but instead now you had to complete some activities. That was the first thing that we started realizing from the data mining. So Blizzard went out and made their own announcement pointing out that yes, indeed, you will need now to complete group content to receive this set of charges of the catalyst, which is now capping at 6. Now, we didn't know exactly and precisely which activities. So of course there was the danger, there was the fear of perhaps Blizzard using this system as the grind of the first season, like requiring quite a lot of effort for you to gain these charges. Turns out it doesn't look nearly as grindy, it doesn't look nearly as bad. They say themselves that there will be a weekly quest which will simply require you to do the same sort of group content that provides you with catalyst eligible gear in the first place. So, completing this quest awards 1 charge to all current and future characters on your WoW account. If it doesn't include the open world, then it's likely just gonna be what it is now. PvP, Mythic Plus, and raiding. There is the counter to this. Some players have complained that they were rather chill and rather enjoyed getting their charge of the catalyst for free, doing absolutely nothing. The counter is that in Season 1 of Dragonflight, there isn't going to be a new currency, so there's not going to be Cosmic Flux that you need to grind, that you need to gather before you can actually use the creation catalyst. So some players said, well, but that doesn't matter because you have tons of Cosmic Flux, you can get dozens of thousands of it. Of course, this is a catch-up system, it's a catch-up mechanism. Your new brand level 60 fresh leveled alt was not going to have dozens of thousands of Cosmic Flux available to craft their stuff with the catalyst. So it was an issue, it was a barrier. It was the grind required for you to gather the catalyst is going to be the equivalent of the grind required for you to go out and complete this weekly quest to get the charge. Also, there is sort of the kind of cynical answer, which is, why do you care about the catalyst, the charges of the catalyst requiring high-end, end-game content to be able to work, if that is what the catalyst is supposed to do and if that is what the catalyst is supposed to be for? You are complaining that you need to raid and do Mythic Plus to gain charges of the catalyst, even though the catalyst is going to give you gear like tier sets that you will be using in Mythic Plus and in the raid. So if you don't plan on doing Mythic Plus and you don't plan on raiding and you don't plan on doing PvP, then why do you care about what is required to get the catalyst, to get charges for the catalyst? That is also a quite valid question. When it comes to the catalyst, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. As I said, I would have been better off. I think this could have been a good opportunity for Blizzard to introduce something more to do in the open world. As I said, It's very profession themed, it's very profession focused at the moment, the open world is. So if you added this weekly quest based on doing world quests, doing elite quests, or gaining a certain amount of rep with different factions, etc., could have given some more incentive to the players to get out in the open world more. I'm not too worried whatsoever about the catch-up system. I think it's going to come quite quickly. It's going to be something along the lines of you can repeat this, or you can gain multiples of these weekly quests if you're not at full, if you're not at 6 stacks, if you're not at 6 charges of the catalyst. You can continue to redo this over and over to help you catch up later on in this first tier. I wouldn't worry too much about the catch-up mechanism for this system. Now, after this, we are left with the tiny few last touches of balance tuning, which are mostly going to pick up what we checked the last few days of balance tuning, some corrections, so to speak. The first tiny correction, but it is still a welcome one, is the change to refreshing Jade Wind of Mistweaver Monk. This was the inexplicable nerf given to this ability, expanded all the way up to a 45-second cooldown for no apparent reason. Now, at the very least, it's slightly better. It has been buffed by 50% in the amount it heals. It's still garbage to have a 45-second cooldown for this little, but you know, the option in the choice node for this talent is not that big of a deal for Mistweaver, so you can still pick this up as an extra help in AoE healing, even though you would have wanted more for a 45-second cooldown. There is then some damage buffs. The damage buff to Restoration Shaman, they get 20% more damage to Acid Rain, which is their Torghast power of the ticking healing rain also doing damage. No, it's not remotely close to being as OP as Torghast, but now with this buff it is going to be doing the equivalent of 4 Chain Lightnings worth of damage on 6 enemies. So whenever you cast Healing Rain with this talent on 6 enemies, just assume you just casted 4 Chain Lightnings. That's basically what it's gonna do. Then you have some more buffs to Restoration Shaman, although these are not confirmed because the core modifier, the base aura modifier changes are not always making it into the hotfix phase, into the patch phase of a beta. So technically at the moment there is the core change which increases the damage of Restoration Shaman by 28%, which is quite significant to all of their abilities. It wasn't that weak, the damage of Restoration. The biggest problem, of course, of Restoration is that they need to stop completely, to stop healing completely to do damage, and that their AoE damage is capped significantly because Chain Lightning only hits 3 targets, which is very, very pitiful. It's nothing like Consecration, like Shield of the Righteous, like Spinning Crane Kick. All of that stuff is fully AoE. It scales up to 5 or 8 targets and then lower the more targets, but Restoration Shaman had very, very few ways to do AoE damage once it lost all of its board powers. The Earthquake attached to the Elemental, the Vesper Totem, the Raging Vesper Vortex, all that stuff is gone now. They have gotten nothing back, so this could be a sensible buff to the damage of Restoration Shaman. We also have, of course, when is it not a video about balance tuning without talking about priests? So first, the damage of Holy Priest gets nerfed. Holy Priest gets basically its 2 damage cooldowns both nerfed. Imperial Blaze goes from a 30-second cooldown to a 1-minute cooldown, which is quite massive. This talent was very, very powerful. In AoE it was good, in single target it was even better. This talent alone would guarantee that you had a permanent Holy Fire dot on the target. If you actually also casted Holy Fire yourself right on cooldown, you would basically be able to have 2 Holy Fire dots on 2 targets up at all times. This was a quite strong talent on a 30-second cooldown. It is still, of course, worth taking if you're going to be focusing a little bit more on damage as Holy Priest, but it's definitely now significantly worse. Also, the other damage talent of Holy Priest, which was Divine Ward, was an option to use as a damage talent, has been nerfed. Now, when you use Chastise with this ability, empowering your damage, Smite will only be doing 30% more damage instead of 50% 15% more damage. As I said in our healers DPS video, Holy Priest and Discipline Priest were the two strongest healers when it came to single target damage. So these are nerfs focused around the single target damage that Holy Priest was doing. Then we have the core modifiers corner, the one that is not confirmed yet, but we do have a 14% healing done nerf to Flash Heal to Holy Priest, and more importantly, an even further damage nerf to Holy Priest, because we have an aura modifier reducing all of the damage of Holy Priest by 14% at the moment. Again, it's not confirmed, these type of changes are not certain, but it might be hinting at something that Blizzard has in mind for Holy Priest. We then finish, as is tradition, with the wall of text about discipline. This is a back-to-back wall of text because the original wall of text was about the nerf, the one that made their evangelism a 3-minute cooldown instead of a 1.5-minute cooldown, so it was a massive nerf. However, Blizzard, in less than 48 hours, reverted everything and ended up buffing the Discipline Priest significantly. So I have no idea how they managed to balance things with such drastic changes, like from one day to the next. It's very, very weird. So Evangelism has once again a 1.5-minute cooldown, so yeah, raid discipline is saved. What is very important is that, yes, to balance out the fact that they are keeping this cooldown, they are nerfing a few other things about their healing, like the spell damage heals targets affected by Atonement by 40% of the damage now instead of 50%. You have Power Word Radiance applying Atonement for 60% of its duration instead of 50, so they get the revert on the duration of the Atonement. You do have the nerf to Schism, so now Schism only increases the damage done by 15% instead of 25%, but the talent that buffs Schism can increase Schism's duration by 6 seconds instead of 3. So now you can have a quite significantly long window for Schisms, to the point that it might feel not even worth, because you don't really have that many burst abilities to use for that long for Schism, but still, that's okay. The bigger change is that Sins of the Many, which is the talent that makes you do a flat amount of damage more, reduced by 1% per target affected by Atonement, was at 12%. So, in a party, if you spread Atonement to everyone, you are doing 7% more damage. Very simple. Here, Sins of the Many now is going to give you 30% base damage instead of 12% base damage, which means that on a party in Mythic Plus, if you have all 5 players with Atonement, you are doing 25% more damage, not 7. So this is an 18% damage increase flat to Discipline Priest in Mythic Plus. So that's very good already. What's even better is that Sins of the Many is now baseline. So what's even better is that now you don't even have to spend a talent point in the last bracket of your talents, the most important bracket of your talent tree, to get this. Now it's free. It's baseline learned at level 12. It's gonna be interesting to see that the Discipline Priest Twinks now getting a 30% damage buff for free. That's gonna be cool. However, this is quite interesting. Of course, instead of Sins of the Many, you get a new talent to buff your Smite at rank 2 by 16%, 15%, so bad, but still, I'm not gonna complain if they give me Sins of the Many as baseline in return. Lastly, another massive buff to the damage of Discipline with Harsh Discipline, which has been redesigned, and by redesign I mean massively buffed. Before, at rank 2 of this talent, you needed to trigger Atonement 100 times for your next penance to be free and fire 3 additional bolts. This was happening often enough in the raid, but it wasn't that powerful anyways to get this proc. It was much more powerful in Mythic Plus, but proccing Atonement 100 times in Mythic Plus is much, much harder. So now you get something much more simple. Every 10 or 5 at rank 2 casts of Smite, your next penance is going to be free and firing 3 additional bolts. So this is much stronger, this is much better, especially because they are completely in your control. So you can do something like Penance, Smite, 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 wait on the 5th Smite, because Penance is about to come off cooldown anyways, use Penance, use the 5th Smite, proc this talent and use Penance again. That is going to be very, very good for your burst and for your quick healing and quick damage around penance. It's a much better talent now for Discipline. So Discipline has gotten significant buffs while also being the weakest of the damage dealers when it comes to AoE and multiple targets, so it was perhaps warranted. For today, these were all of the changes related to balance tuning. I am still quite positive about the change to the catalyst. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue to gain these charges back. And then lastly, I'm happy for all the unlucky guys who can, at the very least for the next 3 or so weeks, test the changes of the beta, like these ones, for example, also now on the PTR, without having to be into the beta itself. So, with this being said and done on this Sideways Sunday, it's time to leave each other. Of course, I start by thanking all of my Patreon supporters for being a big contributor and a big support in what allows me to continue to produce content for a while, for all of you to enjoy. Also, you can support still in other ways, not including the expenditure of cash, which include liking and commenting down below on this very video, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Those would be quite appreciated as well. Lastly, for more social interactions and general parasocial relationships with your imaginary online friend, I am found to be followed but still not stalked on Twitter, as well as you can subscribe to my Patreon right at whatever these 2 links are. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I have to put you back. Sorry, we have to go back to above the PC. Goodbye.